Persona 4 Golden was my first ever traditional JRPG I ever played back in 2020, and as the J in JRP suggest, Japan has a heavy influence in these games that a lot of times they are based in Japan themselves. And sometimes that game lets you peek into what life is like for a Japanese citizen, especially a game like Persona, a game that lets you explore cities in Japan, a game that lets you immerse yourself in Japanese environments and seasons, and even eat food that you would find in Japan. And having finished Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal, and currently playing Persona 5 Strikers, I've surprisingly learned a variety of facts and even ways of life when it comes to Japan solely by playing that Persona franchise. So in this video, we're going to go over 10 things that I've learned. Let's talk about it. Number 1. Japanese curry. So I'm actually a really big fan of Indian food and Indian restaurants, especially when I learned that most of them have buffets. I really love the taste of a nice curry mango and rice dish, or just curry and rice in general. And so when curry was a big part of the menu in LeBlanc and Persona 5, I was kind of intrigued to know there was such a thing as Japanese curry. More than that, I wanted to know what it tasted like. And unfortunately, there aren't too many restaurants here in Florida that have Japanese curry, but when I went to Seattle, Washington this year, I was finally able to try chicken karaage with some curry and rice, and of course, it was amazing. Not going to lie, I was a bit surprised at how similar the taste was to an Indian curry when it comes to that tangy spice, but also unique in its own sense. I would describe it as a curry spiced gravy because of the color and consistency. Overall, it was such a neat thing to finally try. Number 2. Japanese beaches. Now, to stay on theme with learning about Japanese facts, I do feel a bit dumb about this one. Now listen, I'm just a white guy from Florida who, yes, is very familiar with beaches here, but know very little about Japan in general. So it was kind of a nice surprise to learn that Japan has beaches, and nice ones at that. And before everyone starts laughing because they know Japan is an island, so of course there's going to be beaches. Yes, that is true for any intelligent person who has geographical awareness, but I am not one of those people. And this thought initially came from the beach trip that took place in Persona 4 Golden, and that event really sparked the idea to research beaches in Japan, and it was very neat to see how pristine they were and how connected they were to the residents of Japan. And again, being from Florida where beaches are ingrained into our souls, it's neat to see some of the same things connected to other people across the world. Number 3. Snowy weather in Japan. To keep the train moving along with me not knowing anything about Japan's geographical state, it's safe to say that I'm pretty dumb when it comes to knowing Japan's seasons. And to really explain myself though, it's not that I was too dumb to realize that Japan had beaches or even that it snowed in Japan. It's more I didn't really know much about the country in general, so these simple and basic facts were just oblivious to me. And to dive deeper into this point, it wasn't until I played Persona 4 Golden that I had actually seen some resemblance to cold weather in Japan. Yes, every place gets cold, but when you only see a particular image of a country or region on a postcard or on a commercial, you don't necessarily think about the other images that make up its complete existence. But finally seeing seasons based solely on playing Persona, it really did give a brighter and more full understanding of the flourishing country of Japan. Number 4. Navigating the subway system. I remember clear as day the beginning of Persona 5 Royal and it throwing me right in and saying, alright, go find the next location by using the subway system and getting to the correct terminal. Good luck. Thankfully, a friend warned me of what would happen, and to my surprise, I was able to navigate without too many delays and confusion. Now, I am by no means an expert when it comes to the Japanese transportation system. This learning experience was much more wide than that though. Really, it just opened my eyes to how truly complex the subway system is. Not only that though, rewinding the learning experience back a little bit, it was also eye-opening at how prevalent people use this system on a daily basis for their needs like work or shopping. Again, being from Florida, we just drive around everywhere we need to go. So seeing that people use the subway system on a daily basis and learning how complex it was to get to the right terminals made for an interesting experience to say the least. Number 5. Hot baths as a social leisure. This one was probably by far the most surprising for me. I actually have never heard of a public hot bath in the context of gathering a group of friends together to just relax. And many times in Japan, this leisure is done naked, which was even more of a surprise to me. Now, I guess you can make the argument that it is very similar to something like a hot tub or a jacuzzi in the States, but the difference is that there are mini onsens as they are called in Japan, and not just at a public pool. Onsens are deeply embedded into Japan culture and history. It's a pretty cool thing to learn about. Number 6. Corrupt government. Now this one is a little complex, so bear with me as I try to explain it. Two things immediately come to mind when processing this. Number 1, we know that Persona is famous for creating a storyline where in the end, the government is usually the one that is corrupt and controls the narrative at play within these deep and dark stories. Knowing that, I didn't want to necessarily assume that Japan's actual government is evil and wicked, but the other thing that comes to mind is kind of the obvious and more cynical response, which is, isn't every government really corrupt? But to dial it back a bit, this was a surprise for me once I started doing research and learning that it is a well-known thing that Japan's government hasn't always been trustworthy. It's crazy to think about too, because Japan is known for being an overly nice country where its residents look after you, care for you, and generally are trustworthy. But according to transparency.org, 84% of Japanese residents think that corruption is a big problem in their government. Now, I'm not an expert in Japanese politics, but from the research I have done, it seems like the Japanese government has had issues with bribery and government-led bid rigging on public projects. These projects are usually relating to construction, and to really summarize why government-led bid rigging is a form of corruption, it basically means that the government manipulates the market to raise these bids to a higher price to gain that money. I think it's safe to say that every government is corrupt, not just Japan, but if you didn't know that Japan was included in this too, well, unfortunately it is. Number 7. Valentine's Day and White Day. As someone who isn't well traveled, it's always fun to learn what holidays are shared with other countries. It was really neat learning that Japan actually celebrates Valentine's Day and an extra day called White Day. This heavily tied to the end of Persona 4 Golden where I first learned about it. But essentially how it works is that during Valentine's Day on February 14th, the women usually give chocolates and candy to the men as opposed to flowers or jewelry. And on White Day, which usually takes place a month later on March 14th, it's the day when men will do the gift giving and usually return the gifts threefold. The gifts are usually not chocolate either, but can be any types of gifts. This was such a neat concept to learn about and might not have ever learned about if it wasn't for Persona. Number 8. Japanese festivals. Festivals aren't too much of a tradition here in the States like it is in Japan, and it's always a neat time when the Persona crew gets together to celebrate a festival and change into traditional attire and picking out on food. It makes for a nice break in the story and gameplay to just see the characters live a little. It's also neat to see certain festivals that are truly celebrated in Japan, like the Tanabata Festival and the Sumigawa Fireworks Festival in Persona 5. Number 9. Vending machines. Now this is a simple fact that I learned, but knowing that vending machines are literally everywhere on Japanese streets is kind of a cool thing. And of course, this is seen in both Persona 4 and 5, being able to get drinks that increase HP and SP. Now when it comes to vending machines being everywhere on every street, it's definitely not the case here in the States. Vending machines are usually inside of a public facility like a pool or on a college campus, not necessarily on the streets, and not necessarily everywhere. Honestly though, who doesn't like vending machines? Number 10. Learning the value of yen. It wasn't until I played Persona that I was curious what the value of yen was compared to the value of the US dollar. Turns out that $1 US is almost equivalent to 100 yen. So when I saw items of Persona that were something like 15,000 yen, it did not mean $15,000, but instead $150. Having only been to one other country that used a different currency, it's always a fascinating thing to learn about. And well, Persona allowed me to do that. And that was 10 things I learned from playing Persona. Let me know in the comments if you were able to learn anything about the Japanese culture and lifestyle from playing Persona. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.